My name is Gary Smith, and I'm retired from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Today I've brought in artifacts belonging to my great-uncle, Stuart Smith, who served in the World War in 1914 to 1916. There are 3 different plaques, together with 2 photos in his personal wallet.
In 1909, the dominions of the British Empire would begin to standardise their militaries after the British Army. 5 years later, at the outbreak of World War I in 1914, the Dominion of Canada's permanent force was only 3,000 men strong. Recruitment began immediately. Between 1914 and 1918, 619,000 men and women enlisted for military service, with 424,000 ending up going overseas as part of the Canadian Expeditionary Force. Each played a role in moving the Allies towards victory, with the land forces making major conflict-changing contributions at Vimy Ridge, the Second Battle of Ypres, the Somme, and Passchendaele. Canada emerged from the war as an internationally respected, proud, and capable nation. Driven by the courage of its citizens, this newfound standing helped to secure legislative independence when the Statute of Westminster was signed on December 11th, 1931.
So Gary, welcome to Militaria. Could you take a moment and tell us what you brought in today?
Today I've brought along the different artifacts that I've received through my family. I think it was around 2002, after I came back from a trip to Belgium. My uncle Edgar said, "I think that you should now have possession of these memorabilia from your great-uncle Stuart."
What you brought in, just to clarify, is this top one here is the memorial plaque. And this was issued by the Commonwealth to every soldier that was killed in action during the First World War. Underneath it is one of his identity discs. He would have had 2. And then this plaque here, which I think is quite interesting, says that his name is commemorated on the Menin Gate. And Menin Gate is for those that were killed in Belgium. Because his name is commemorated on that, it means he has no known grave. So they never found his remains. This, to me, is an important part of your history. So Gary, do you know anything of your great-uncle's service?
Very little, only what I've researched as an adult.
He was an iron worker when he enlisted in the First World War. He enlisted with the 63rd Halifax Rifles on their recruiting draft of soldiers to be sent overseas as reinforcements. He got over to France in about 1916. He was sent to the 13th Canadian Infantry Battalion, which was the Black Watch, Royal Highlanders of Canada. If you were to get a list of battles that Canadians fought in, the Black Watch will probably check off the majority of them. Second World War, they were also involved in the raid in Dieppe and then clearing of Northwest Europe. So very important regiment in Canadian history, so much so that when the Canadian Army expanded after the Second World War, one of the battalions that came regular was the Black Watch. So he's with the 13th Battalion. He gets into the field, into the front line, May of 16, and unfortunately a month later he was killed in action. As I alluded to, with being on the Menin Gate, they did not find any of his remains. So he could have been in a trench collapse. He could have been hit by an artillery shell or all sorts of horrible things that you can only imagine that would cause you not to be identified. According to the 13th Battalion War Diary, they did a fairly major attack that day. There was a battalion attack, went over the top, and there's 2 pages of casualties in the War Diary. So it wasn't an isolated incident that he lost his life that day. It wasn't a wrong place at the wrong time. It sounds like a large attack that may not have gone well for the battalion that day. The thing that stuck out in my mind during the research was how detailed the Black Watch's War Diary was. Zooming in on the month that Private Smith was killed, they went to the trouble of listing every single soldier that was killed or injured. The family he came from, was it a large family? Do you have any memories?
I did receive some from my own grandfather,
Right.
with regards to Uncle Stuart's parents, but they did have large families on farms and things like that back in the day.
You had also mentioned that you remember visiting Granny Smith and seeing this prominently displayed in the home.
Yes.
I wonder if you can talk about that.
Certainly. It would be around 1960, so I would have been probably about 7 years old at the time. She was a very fragile person who sat with her cane on the back of her rocking chair. The house had a wood fire going. It was a small house and very warm. She lived with one of her daughters. But I remember a shelf and this particular article, the memorial plaque, being there with a poppy on it.
And is that what took your eye to it? Was seeing the poppy and thinking it meant something, or did someone actually explain what was?
I believe at the time, because there was the picture of Uncle Stuart beside the scroll, I knew that even as a young child, that it was someone who died in the war. As I grew up through the years, the picture, the poppy, and the scroll were always together.
So obviously it had a lot of significance to the family.
Totally. The reason these artifacts are so important to me and to my family is to have had someone who did this supreme sacrifice of his life for our country.
So Gary, thank you so much for bringing these wonderful family artifacts into Militaria. I was wondering, what are the plans for them? Like, I realize you went to the trouble of framing that one, so these are obviously things that are important to you. Is there someone lined up to take charge of them when it's no longer your duty to look after them?
They would have gone to Brandon, our youngest son. I have a sad epithet to that. Brandon passed away in 2007.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Our oldest boy actually went on to study at Laval University and actually works at a museum.
Okay.
And Jarrett will eventually get these artifacts, and until such time they hang prominently in Brandon's bedroom in memory both to Great Uncle Stuart and to Brandon himself.
Once again, thank you so much for bringing these artifacts in.
Thank you, Gary. The knowledge of what that war was all about and how they had such very difficult times, so many things that they would have sacrificed. So remembering is very important, not just at Remembrance Day, but every day.